Hello, everyone. Let's try that again. Sorry for a little bit of the delay here, but welcome to Adobe Live on this beautiful spring Monday. My name is James Bonanno, and I am joined by Noah Fainer, a very talented filmmaker, editor, commercial creator. So Noah, welcome to Adobe Live today.
Thanks, James. How's it going, guys?
Welcome everybody to the chat. Again, sorry for a bit of the delay, but thanks for sticking with us. Voodoo Val, Jack, and the gang is all here. Make sure to please, tune in, leave those questions as we have 2 hours of some action-packed content today. And before we get started, Noah, I do want to make sure we kick it off to you, but I just want to start with a little housekeeping. If you missed the previous stream, you can view the replay on Behance over on YouTube. Make sure to check out that video and stick with us. Check out Angelo Konofaus, create 3D lettering using Photoshop. Angelo, I hope I pronounced your last name properly. And this week, our creative challenges are all themed. So very, very exciting stuff. Tune into the Illustrator challenges where you'll learn how to create and use logos in the app. So I was just telling you, Noah, how I actually use a lot of these Illustrator challenges to teach myself. Very noob status when it comes to Illustrator. So really great content over there. It's every weekday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, right before this stream. With all that being said, let's get into you, Noah. No one's here to listen to me ramble. So why don't you give us a little brief introduction of who you are and what you're going to be kind of working on over the next 2 days for us?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, my name's Noah. Can you guys see my screen right now? Is that what's going on?
Yes,
pretty much.
We're all good.
Yeah, so my name's Noah. Here's a picture of me, and here's some slides that I put together. So yeah, about me. Here's some behind the scenes photos of me just doing my thing with my camera. And yeah, I'm a video producer and motion designer. So I've been making videos for over 7 years. Actually started when I was in high school. I used to make like gaming YouTube videos of me just kind of like playing scary games and reacting to it. So that's kind of where it all started. That's kind of how I started getting into video editing. That was around like when I was like 16. And then eventually kind of like carried forth into university, making GoPro videos of me and my friends going to the lake and like doing backflips off of trees and stuff like that. And I had a lot of fun doing that. Joined a lot of school programs and kind of that sort of thing, doing like just trying to be a part of the community locally where I was in school. And yeah, so now I'm here.
Awesome.
And I've had 5 different jobs in video production. I was trying to really just do everything that I could. And the fact that I was like being able to, get paid to do something like that, I was like, sign me up for everything that I could get my hands on. I was just trying to make as much videos as I could and, get those hours in, because they say, what is it, like 10,000 hours or something until you become a pro?
Which is an insane amount of time when you think about it, but it goes by fast if you're taking on as many projects as you've taken on.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the thing. It was like, I needed to make some money anyway. So the fact that I could make some money while getting those hours in was like bonus, right? So eventually started focusing more on being a freelance, because I was doing photography as well. Freelance photographer, videographer, and motion designer for the last 4 years. I did a lot of like in London, Ontario. I went to Western University, and I was doing a lot of like party videos. So like nightclubs, social events, doing a lot of that stuff freelance. And then recently just left my job after graduating to start focusing more on freelancing and starting my own video production business. So yeah.
Right on, man. Awesome. Well, these I always love a little behind the scenes action, and I'm a big sucker for camera rigs and camera setups. So maybe once we get into Premiere today, we can kind of talk through some of the logistics of the cameras you're using. And I definitely want everyone to get a glimpse of your work. Noah, yeah, I mean, it seems like you have a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel and a TikTok I started recently. Sweet. I just love teaching, and I've kind of been like a teacher at heart, and I've had a passion for teaching. I started teaching swim lessons when I was younger. That was one of the first jobs I've ever had, was like teaching kids how to swim. So that was cool, and kind of like teaching stuff. And when I was in university, I started my own kind of like, not really like a club, but kind of like a workshop, did my own workshops just on my own time to just kind of teach people After Effects and Premiere. Sweet. So kind of wanted to stick with it, but I was like, how can I do this without being in university. So TikTok, YouTube, there we go.
That's it, man. Hey, it's the world that we live in right now, and it's a great place to be, and it's awesome that you're here getting to teach us what you're getting into today. And I definitely want to hop into Premiere Pro. Let's see, we got some of your work up here that maybe those in the chat can check out. Is it on your website, or this is all on your YouTube as well?
No, so I do have a website. I would say for my work, probably Vimeo is probably the best place to go, or Instagram.
Cool.
This is just some of my work here, like on a slide, just some screenshots of the different things I've done. But in terms of like, I can pull up my website right here and see, these are kind of like marketing videos that I created for some of the brands that I've worked with. And I just kind of do like a little case study about it. To kind of, show the concept behind the video and kind of, what the results I hope to achieve. So these are just some of the things I've done, and some product commercials here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anyone in the chat, make sure to check out Noah's website. Give him some love over on YouTube as well. And I think just given that we started a little bit later today, Noah, I was thinking maybe we can just kind of hop right into Premiere and get you started on what you're going to be working on. And then any questions we get from the chat and any questions I have, I'll continue to feed them as you're working today. Yeah,
for sure. So I guess we'll get started with setting up the project folder, all that sort of thing.
Let's do it. Yeah, you're the boss, man. Let's do it.
All right, let's do that. So so when I start a project, let's just assume that, we're at the point where I've filmed everything. I just packed up my gear, and I'm like ready to start the edit. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just come here and I'll make a new folder. This is kind of like the root folder, the main folder. And I actually find that in video editing and kind of video production in general, you have to be super organized, not just, for the obvious reason that it's going to make your life a lot easier, but things won't go wrong as easily when you're organized. So that's true for, keeping your digital space organized. So on your desktop, and as well as your physical space. So, organizing camera gear and making sure that everything is where it's supposed to go. And I like to just start the project off by creating a root folder, which is kind of like the main folder that will house all assets. And we'll just call it beer commercial. Yeah, there we go. So I'll just throw that on the desktop. And let's see, where did the window go? Oh, it's hiding behind the Zoom window. Here we go. Yeah, so we have the beer commercial, and these are kind of, I'll kind of walk you through the folders that are pretty much standard for every video project. At least this is how I do it. So I'll have an assets folder, which is kind of like anything that's going to be used as part of the video. That's going to be excluded from these other folders, such as music would be another one. And then I'll also have my footage. And let's see what else. I'll have sound effects folder, but we can get into that probably tomorrow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring all this footage over. So as you can see,
I always love this part of the process. I know for a lot of people it may seem a little like mundane, but you're totally right. The organization aspect of everything is so crucial, and I'm always so interested to see how other people organize their project folders as well.
Right, for sure. I think it's so important, and especially in the digital space, because you can have like a million different files all over the place. You accidentally delete something, and like, what are you going to do? There's no way to get it back once you delete something digitally. I'm sure there's like you can take it to like a specialist or something that knows how to do that stuff, but
no, but we have a question from Rob. Rob, welcome to the chat. It's a great question. I think as we start this stream off, he is from Saskatchewan. So greetings from Saskatchewan, another fellow Canadian. Yeah, there we go. Rob wants to know what your best advice to someone is starting out in video. He says that his son is going to school for video production and wants to do it, basically wants to do what you do. So maybe a little piece of advice for Rob's son.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And to start out, I mean, I don't think that there's necessarily like do this and then this will be the result. It's not as like linear. It's not as you know, the path isn't so clear. But one thing that I would say is true, like no matter, starting out when you're starting out, is just to, get those hours in and to practice as much as you can. And even putting yourself out there. So no matter what level you're at, whether you're beginner, intermediate, pro, whatever it is, just putting yourself out there and like showcasing your work in some kind of way on some platform. Maybe not necessarily like posting on Instagram, Facebook, even though that's like, I think personally that, that's the greatest and most effective way to reach the largest amount of people with, least amount of effort. But, even just showing people and telling people who you like, friends, you're like, hey, check out this video I made. Hey, look at this. This is what I did. And then you can get like feedback from them and kind of gauge their response. And that's really going to help you develop and grow. And when people know that you're doing videos, they'll be like, oh, hey, the video guy. I need a video for,
Right.
I need a video for, or I know a guy who needs a video for his business, or for an artist who wants to do like a behind the scenes video or some kind of video like that. And then because you've been putting yourself out there, because you've been, letting people know that you're the video guy, then, naturally one thing will lead to another, as opposed to,
Yeah,
if you don't tell anyone, how is anyone supposed to know? So
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Practice is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Great answer. And yeah, you got to be able to market yourself as well. So putting yourself out there and marketing, which I'm sure at some point, either today or tomorrow, you'll be sort of discussing as we continue the edit. But great question, Rob, and welcome to the chat. Welcome from Saskatchewan.
Yes, fellow Canadians.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, now I'm going to get into the Premiere side of the project organization. And kind of what I like to do here is when I'm starting a new project in Premiere, name it something, relevant to the project. Don't just, when I was younger, I thought it was hilarious to like give it like silly names, but then eventually I quickly realized that, that's not going to help me. So
yep,
we'll just call it beer commercial. Or sometimes I know some people like to call it main, like MAIN, like that. And that works too, as long as you know that you have one file that's like, here is where the project lives, So
yep.
I'm just going to call it beer commercial. Yeah. And then as for these settings, I'm going to choose the folder, beer commercial, and we'll just put it there. Some people also like to create a folder for the project file, which you can do as well, but I usually just like to leave it in the root folder. So I'll just go like that, beer commercial. And then for this one, renderer, Mercury playback engine GPU acceleration with CUDA is ideal for if you do have a CUDA graphics card. But if not, these other options work as well.
I've noticed. I know you're working on a PC, and for those in the chat that edit on a PC, this is great. I edit on a Mac, and my Mac has had some issues in the past. Whether it's because it's an Apple product or because it's an older Mac, it's up for debate. But I've changed that render setting kind of back and forth depending on what I'm rendering, and it seems to fix some of the issues, just because my graphics card apparently is not strong enough to handle certain things I'm rendering. So if anyone in the chat is running into those issues, then you can kind of toggle that back and forth.
Yeah, so it's kind of a matter of just like knowing the machine you're working on and kind of optimizing your settings for that.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've gone with so far. And when I load in the project, when I'm in my Premiere, like this is bare bones Premiere, just started up. We don't have anything here. I like to start in the assembly tab. This is just these different layouts up here are good for kind of like the part of the workflow that you're at. So for me, we're just going to start with what's called the first assembly. And generally, if you kind of break down the post-production process, you have your first assembly is kind of like putting together all your assets and kind of getting everything together into, a first assembly. I don't know how else to kind of word that.
Yep. Yeah. Your first cut. It's always
First cut. Yeah.
Assembly cuts mean different things to different people too. I feel like an assembly could literally just be all visuals, no audio, or very rough, very, very rough before it actually goes to a rough cut stage. So, but you're right. It's just a good tab to get started. You can see all your clips a lot easier than you would in some of the other tabs.
Yeah, exactly. So to kind of import and get everything started, there's a million different ways to import. I like to double click here, import to start. And then I go into the root folder and I will click on footage and then import folder. And this will import all my footage. It's pretty quick usually. I mean, if you have giant files, I've had projects with like massive files, so this might take a little bit longer depending on, the file size, but we should be good. So here we are, footage is loaded in. And another tip is to really stay organized kind of in your Premiere project as well, because you can be organized on your computer or on the desktop or whatever your root folder is for your project folder. But you also have to stay organized actually in Premiere as well, because it could get messy. But the nice thing about Premiere is that you can rearrange files within the content browser, and it won't like mess up the link between them. Whereas if I were to actually start moving files around over here in the folder, it could break the link between the Premiere project file and the asset. So Premiere you'll have to relocate it. But yeah, so I'm just going to import.
That's never a fun time. Even if it's on another drive that you have plugged in, it's like one of those sigh moments where you're like, did I really delete that or move that somewhere else? It happens.
Yeah, facepalm moments.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm going to import the music as well. And this is kind of just like what I start with. Another thing I'll do is I'll just come down here into the bins, create a new bin, and I'll just call this one sequences, which for reasons that I will get to in just a moment. So sequences, yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a new sequence. And this is kind of just like for the initial first assembly, just prepping things and getting things ready. I'll usually just pick custom. And I know that, 29.97 is fine. Or you know what, maybe I'll go to 24. Usually 24 is more for like cinema, and 29.97 is kind of like for like YouTube videos, Instagram videos, any of that stuff works, but either work depending on what your end result is or wherever the video is going. And I think that's another important thing that I would like to mention is that you should always know kind of where the video is going to go before you kind of start jumping into it. And that's something that I'll predetermine kind of in the pre-production phase when I'm thinking about, okay, what's this video for? Like, why am I making this? In this case, it was just a spec commercial, just me kind of, experimenting and being creative and trying to come up with just like a cool portfolio piece. But if you were actually working with a client, you would sit down and be like, okay, where's this video going? Are you trying to get brand awareness on social media? Because in that case, maybe let's create a 4:5 version or as opposed to a 16:9.
Right.
But in this case, I'm going to start with a 1920 by 1080p project. Square pixels, progressive scan. So I actually James, maybe you know this a little better, but these lower field, upper field, or no field, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's how the computer processes the image by like scanning each pixel from like top left all the way down across until it gets to the bottom.
I feel
Something
like
to do with that?
I think that's something to do with that. Yeah, it's one of those fields that I've never even really acknowledged. Like most of those I can speak somewhat intelligently to, and that's one that no fields progressive scan is pretty much where it stays and has tended to work on most machines I've used.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're correct with that.
Right. Yeah. So that's usually what I'll leave it at. And work in color space, Rec 709, generally kind of what you want. And in terms of sequences, this is kind of where this is my process. How I usually do things is I'll make my first sequence and I'll title it selects. I like to just make everything all caps. That's important. If it's all caps, it's probably important. So anyways.
Yeah, I used to do that with every single folder, with every single asset. Like, I got really aggressive with it. I write in all caps, so I think that's like where it translated to. And then one day I'm just like, this is too much. I'm yelling at myself, so I put everything back to lowercase. But I'm with you. I think having all caps, you can't not see it. It's right there. It's in your face.
And let people, either that or people are just gonna think you're really angry that day. Yeah, when you were making this project.
Like, I don't want to put these selects in here.
Yeah. So yeah, the first sequence I'll make is selects, then I'll just duplicate it and I'll call this one main. So the difference between these two is that as you'll see later, but I'm going to be doing editing on a dual timeline editing. Is that what it's called? I don't know if there's like a proper term for it, but basically editing with two timelines and just having them open like this. And this is kind of how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to start by going through the footage and picking out the pieces of each clip that I like the most, just throwing that into a timeline called selects. And, you know, those selected clips, you know, it's kind of like if you think about it in Lightroom when you're going through your photos and you just click P, the pick button, and then, you know, you're sorting through all the noise and kind of picking what you actually like. So I'll do that with selects. And then my main is kind of where I start piecing together the actual story or in the actual edit. So yeah, and you can even do that. I think organizing your footage in like sequences is actually a good idea. Even just beyond selects, you can get more specific with that, and even just like, you know, maybe like wide shots, close-ups, you know, just different ways of organizing it kind of helps. That way you can, I like to think of it as like, it's like a painter's palette. You know what I mean? You edit all the clips, and then once you have all your clips and your selects in your timeline, then you can just start slowly drag them onto the main timeline and piece together a story as if it's like a painter's palette. You know what I mean? You pick which one you want, put it on the thing, and that's
it's kind of like the equivalent to, you know, for Illustrator fans and users out there, it's like your artboard, you know, and you kind of work with that inside of Premiere. I think one good point, which, you know, you're probably going to hit on, but while we're on the topic of sequences here, is the importance of making sure that you are duplicating sequences once you have certain drafts finished. I used to run into issues early on in my career where a client would ask on like version 3 what I did for version 1, and rather than duplicate each of those sequences, I had just overwritten everything I'd done on the first version. So within your sequences, it's always helpful to make sure, whether it's client work or whether it's personal work, that like every draft that you have is an iteration, because you never know if you're going to need to reference that or if a client's going to need to ask for it, because chances are they will and you won't have it. So it's an important part of the process.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing, is like usually when in my sequences, I'll have selects, then main, and then main V1, V2, V3, whatever, however many versions, or I can even get more specific with the naming. But then if I have so many like sequences that I'm like, okay, which one to know which one is the sequence that I'm actually going to render out, and this is like the final version, I'll usually do like main underscore output like that.
Cool.
Or in all caps, whatever. And that'll kind of identify which one is the sequence that, you know, should be rendered for the final draft or whatever. But again, so yeah, definitely naming your sequences, organizing things in bins, and staying organized, you know, just all around is ideal. And if you really wanted to do it and get real organized, you could even give a name to each clip, but for the sake of time, we'll just
Oh man, I used to early on do that as well. And then I had too many projects, too much footage. I'm like, no way, this is going to take me way too long. And I end up always referencing the clips before I format a card. from that card if I need it again. So it's always helpful to have it.
Yeah, for sure. So that's that. And yeah, so I'll show you guys. So this is kind of like, I'll just keep my footage folder open here. I'll have my selects here, and then where's the program window? Yeah, so this is not the actual, right now we have the source window, and then the program would be, you know, if I was scrubbing through the timeline. So I'm just gonna be in the source window, and I'm just gonna go through these one at a time. And really what I have here is just some shots that I took of the product on a green screen. And I just did this as kind of like a safety. I wasn't sure if I was going to use it on the green screen, because I actually ended up doing a 3D render of the product instead. So I did shoot it on the green screen in case I wanted to do some compositing, but I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to render it out. I don't really need this. So I don't think I'm really going to be needing this anymore.
And were you shooting? So this is shot on your phone, on a cinema camera, on a DSLR, mirrorless. What'd you shoot this on?
Right. So I actually shot this on a Sony A7S II. Sweet. With a 24-105 f4 lens. Let me see if I have some what's it called? Behind the scenes I can show you.
And I imagine this is just in your office or your home.
My condo, so I have to rearrange the whole place.
There you go.
The whole house comes upside down when I
yep.
When I'm shooting. So here we go. If I can show you guys here.
Yeah, that's cool to see.
Yeah, so I love recording myself just doing this stuff, because it makes for good social media content, and I like to make a little TikTok recap. So if you can see here, this was the setup I had. I had my that's my monitor right there, camera cage with the MPF batteries, Sony A7S II, and this setup I have here is basically 2 light stands with some tinfoil and putty, just kind of holding up a sheet of glass with the camera pointing at the glass. And I'll show you one of these shots. The shot that I actually got. It's this shot right here. So I was using a funnel to kind of pour it onto the glass. And right now this is 120 frames per second. Yeah. So I was just like pouring it onto the glass. And then here I used the lens cap with the Sony. It says Sony on it. So I used the lettering on the lens cap to focus the camera for when I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good little hack, because you're so zoomed in, and it's almost like you're trying to focus on macro as it's moving. So that's a really good tip.
Yeah. So I just threw the lens cap on there. I was looking for the Sony lettering, and then I just focused the camera and then left it in manual, and then just poured the beer. And as you can see here, I'm cleaning the lens because I did make a huge giant mess. And yeah.
The important thing is, did you drink the beer? That's an inappropriate waste of beer right there. I mean, it's a great shot, but like, geez.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the beer was very warm and very flat by the time I was done shooting this.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I actually didn't have enough beer. I had to go to the store and buy more, because I was
sure. Valid excuse. This is really cool to see, though. I feel like I always like seeing the behind the scenes. I'm sure everybody else does as well, because it really, I think a lot of people question like, oh, how'd you get this shot and how'd you get this?
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see your process. And so I guess a question I have for you,
sure.
Everyone's process is different in terms of this spec commercial that you're going to be going through. Did you shot list everything out ahead of time, or did you sort of go with it and know, okay, I need these 5-10 shots for the video?
Yeah, so I actually shot listed it just because I didn't like when you don't create shot lists, like it's not the end of the world, but it just makes things go smoother and faster, and like it saves time when you do shot lists. So
yeah, agreed.
So it just saves a lot of time, and you can make sure you're getting all the shots that you need, especially on a client project when it's like this. I just filmed at home, and it was like, if I mess something up or if I forget something, it's not the end of the world. I can just shoot it again. Like it's not a big deal. But I mean, if you're doing like a client project or,
right,
a project where the stakes are higher, then you're definitely going to want a shot list just to have that, like, you know, that place that you can go refer back to be like, okay, did I get everything that I need? And it's saved me so many times. Like, and if you want to take it a step further, I would even go ahead and do a storyboard. And pretty much for all the client work I do storyboards. One, just to help, help the client understand what I'm envisioning in terms of like the edit, because the storyboard is kind of visualizing an edit before you even have the footage, right? You just draw.
Right.
My drawing skills are horrible, by the way. Like,
mine are terrible. I don't. Yeah. Half the time I don't storyboard because I'm embarrassed by how bad I am at sketching. But I'm just like, okay, like I know what I need it to look like. But if a client needs to see it, it needs to go to someone who's an illustrator or at least better than I am at sketching, or else they're gonna have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, I completely agree with you on the shot listing aspect of it. It's a really good habit to get into, even if, for those in the chat, if you're not doing client work yet and it's just spec work like Noah's doing here, because down the line, you're, like you were saying, when the stakes do get higher, when people are being paid as a cinematographer, as a, production, all the roles that you're being paid for, you want to make sure that you're as prepared as possible with the shots you need.
Yeah, definitely. It just makes everything, I feel safer too. Like when I'm at a shoot and I have these pre-production documents, I just feel safer. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it.
No, I feel comfortable and confident knowing that, okay,
right,
I know I need to get these shots, and then that way you can kind of backtrack and create a shooting schedule. Voodoo Val has a really good question about making storyboards. Are you making those on a tablet, or do you use a software for that, or a different app?
I actually, so I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of this website called Studio Binder, but Studio Binder is a great resource for filmmakers to go to. They actually have a software that you can use to kind of do all your pre-production and all your planning, call sheets, all that sort of thing.
Cool.
And it's a software that they have for that, but I didn't even use the software. They have a free downloadable folder with storyboard templates, and then I just printed it out and sketched it out myself, like with my horrible drawing skills. But I mean, it was enough that the client was like, "Oh yeah, I know what that is," and I was like, "All right." Felt good about it. Yes. Mission accomplished. Yeah.
Cool.
So just a storyboard template that you can find on Studio Binder or on Google Images. You can really just search Google. It's just squares, right? Like rectangles. So
yeah. And there's no like set standard of a storyboard. I mean, it should just look like scenes are strung together in a cohesive way for someone to understand. And if it's just a personal project and you can understand it, there you go. Then you're good to go. But cool. So
for sure.
So let's keep on rolling with the select. Sorry, I took you off course here, but
no worries. No worries.
Where you're at.
Yeah. So for selects, this is what we're gonna do. So I'm just kind of like picking them one by one. I know that I'm not going to use these green screen shots, so I'll just skip over that. If anything, you know what? I'm just going to delete it out of here so it doesn't confuse me or anything like that. And I'm just going to start one by one, picking them as I go. And this part is actually really, really important. Your selects, because that's going to, if you do this right, then the rest of the video will just kind of come together. But if you're kind of like lazy with your selects, then, well, I don't know why you would be in the first place, because you spent all that time taking these shots. So it's like, you want to pick the best moments from it, right?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes I think it's easy to get very eager and just like, oh, okay, I have all these shots I need to get into Premiere and start editing. And this is a little time consuming, but the more and more you do it, obviously you've been doing it a long time, and the more and more you are in Premiere, you've shot it all, it goes by a lot quicker. It's a little more efficient. For sure. And then you can really start getting into the edit.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I'm actually going to do, because before I start picking selects, is that I'm going to just quickly switch the view over here by clicking this button at the bottom. It says icon view. I'm going to switch to a list view. That way I can get some more metadata on the actual files. So the reason being is because I want to know what's 120 frames per second. And in this case, it's all 120 frames per second, except for this shot, which is like a sort of a hero shot. But yeah, this is all 120 frames per second. So what I'm going to do is I know that I shot this at 120 because I knew that I wanted to slow it down. And that's the most my camera can do is 120 frames per second. The newer cameras can go up to like 240, which is incredible.
I know, it's insane.
So I like to slow it down. There's a couple of methods you can use to slow footage down. Some people can just like drag it out on, like they like to do it like this, drag it out onto the timeline, and then you can press Control R and then change the speed. So if in this case, I shot it at 120, but I want the footage to play back at 24 frames per second because that's what I set the timeline to. So in that case, you can just change it to 20% because 20% of 120 is 24 frames per second. So yeah, I would do that and then change this time interpolation to optical flow. This just kind of, I don't know if it's necessary for if you're going from 120 to 24 frames per second, but it's just a method for showing slow motion that's a little smoother, kind of like Twixtor. I don't know if you ever used Twixtor. I think it's similar to how Twixtor does it. I'm not 100% sure though. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, so I do that and now it's a lot slower. I actually have to show you guys the behind the scenes once we get to this one, but the behind the scenes for this shot right here. Because this one I made this one was like, yeah, no, this one I made a huge mess. There was beer absolutely everywhere. It's like my tiny apartment smelled like a frat house, but
I just imagine you in like hazmat suits from Breaking Bad, standing in this like one little corner of your condo, just beer exploding everywhere.
Yeah.
Like don't come in here.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what it was like, minus the hazmat suit. So I was soaking wet, and it's cold. It's cold here in Canada. So
oh yeah. So if you didn't change the speed that way, because I definitely leverage that method. The other way that you would maybe change the speed is by actually interpreting the frame rate of the clip, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I prefer to do. Especially if I shot it knowing that I'm going to slow it down anyways. This is just the method I prefer to do. So that's why I'm going to look at all my clips and I see that they're all 120. So I'm going to highlight all of those, right click, modify, interpret footage. And then I'm going to change this to 24 because that's the same frame rate as my timeline. And now you'll see that it changes to 24. And when I go in here and I play it back, it's just a lot slower.
It's going to be slow. Yeah, that's a really good way to do it, especially because you knew that all those clips you wanted to be slow. That way you're not going through and like changing every single speed of every single clip once it's in there, right?
Yeah, for sure. So that's just one thing I do. And this shot was actually tricky because I was shooting this by myself. So I had to get the focus right, but at the same time pour the beer. So this was a tricky part. Yeah.
So you're pouring, so your hand is on, like your left hand or right hand is on the beer pouring it, and then you're kind of handheld or you're on a tripod just with slight shakiness to focus.
Yeah, I was like trying to be super, super, careful with pouring it. Let me see if I have some behind the scenes here. I don't know if I have the behind the scenes for this one. Maybe this? No, this was the green screen.
I love the BTS. It's cool to see all that stuff. It like definitely adds to it.
Yeah. See, so this is the setup I had right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have the same tripod. Great tripod.
It's fantastic, right?
I have the fluid head switched out depending on if I'm shooting video or photos, because I had the regular head that it came with. But that's really, really okay. So you have So just so you got oh my god. you have just like regular just like cardstock board or like poster board from wherever, and that acts as your bounce and also backdrop.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So I knew that the color palette that I was going for, which I have a mood board here. Let me pull up the mood board. So here's the mood board. So cool. I kind of predetermined these colors. Okay. So a lighter one, and then just to have like a contrasting color. Maybe I'll use this for like text or something. But very, very clean, like not too busy looking is what I wanted. So I was going for that, and to achieve that, I just used a foam core board to kind of act as like a backdrop that I could either replace in post production with whatever I wanted, or just to use as like a white backdrop and keep it minimal and keep it clean. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm going to decide on as we go through it today. But yeah, and then the same thing with the one at the bottom, just to kind of bounce some light back into the underneath of it. And you can't see it here, but kind of where the camera is pointing, how the camera is pointing at the can right now, I also have another video light, just blasting some hard light, because I kind of wanted to get like a bit of like a glimmer, or like a specular highlight on the actual liquid coming out of the can. So yeah, that was the setup I had. And then just a black foam core to add some negative fill, just to add some contrast and dimension to the product. So here we go. This was me pouring it, and I'm like looking at the monitor pouring this beer, trying my best to hold it. That's
pretty impressive to like tilt your hand that way. No, it's like pouring it that way while also looking.
It's just the way the setup was, it was like, it was kind of awkward, but I just needed to, make sure I actually, get the shot. So anyways.
As you keep going, Noah, Voodoo Val has another great question. Sorry,
Sure.
Val. I know you have a couple questions in the chat here, but she wants to know what the craziest thing you've ever used as a trick or a hack in a video has been, and I'm curious as well if there is anything crazy.
The craziest thing,
or maybe like a little hack. Like seeing this behind the scenes, you get to see really like the hacks that go into some of these videos. But was there anything really just weird that you've had to use as a hack in creating some of these videos?
Well, I mean, that piece of glass kind of being balanced on the tripod, or not tripods, but light stands, was pretty wild. And I mean, this thing made a huge mess.
Yeah.
This right here, like, because eventually the glass was enduring so much, weight from the liquid falling on it, that it actually slipped. And I don't know if there's a video here of it. I'm pretty sure I got it on camera too. But this glass fell, and fell, and there was beer everywhere, and it just.
And glass? Did the glass break, or was it just it was okay?
No, the glass didn't break, luckily. But there was one time, I'll actually tell you a story about one time when I was shooting something similar, except instead of pouring like liquid onto the glass, I had the camera pointing straight up. If you think about it, like the camera's pointing directly upwards, and then the piece of glass is over the camera lens, and that way I could like drop products onto the glass without it hitting the camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. You can kind of visualize that, right?
Yep.
And I was cleaning the glass because it was like donuts, these little donut things.
Okay.
In Canada, they're Timbits. I don't know if you've ever heard of Timbits, but they're huge. Everyone loves Timbits. At least I hope so. Anyways, they would get like greasy and like get all like the glass all dirty, so I had to clean it. And as I was cleaning it, glass shattered in my hands while I was holding the glass, and there was like,
oh no,
pieces of glass everywhere. I was also in a rush because I really wanted to get this shot. I just was like, I was inspired to get the shot, but I also had something to do in like an hour. So I was like, okay, let me just do this shot. It'll be quick. I'll get it. Everything will be great. Well, I ended up shattering a bunch of glass and then cutting my hands. And coincidentally, I was supposed to go rock climbing in an hour, and I had just finished cutting my hands up with shards of glass. So
oh man, yeah. So the moral of the story is don't rush, kids. Like, definitely, we've all been in that situation though, and I think those situations where we're trying to get that last shot, or we know we want something, can be a little stressful. So it happens sometimes.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think the I don't necessarily have any crazy hacks that I can think off the top of my head, but like seeing the foam core that you have and seeing a lot of those props that you use, when shooting these, for those in the chat and just in my experience, like just having a ton of props on hand that are very like low cost. Like you really don't need to spend a lot on the props to build a little set like that. And they help so much, especially having like black foam core to really,
Right.
block light, and having white foam core or reflectors or, what have you to actually reflect light helps just makes such a huge difference. And it doesn't cost a lot to just do it clearly in your condo or your apartment. So
Right.
I think the misconception is people think, oh, I need to shoot this spec commercial, or I want to shoot something to get, hired for, and I need a whole studio, I need a sound stage, I need all these things. You can literally do it in your kitchen if you have the time and the skills to do it. So
Right. Exactly. Dollar store is your best friend. At least
seriously,
my best friend.
and honestly, keep like for props and stuff, depending on if I feel like I may use it in the future. If it's just like a one-off project, the tag stays on there and I return it
Yeah.
if I can. If not, you find another use for it. So, but you're right, dollar store is very helpful for those things.
Yeah. See, this was me focusing on the lettering for Sony, because I was shooting the camera straight up at a piece of glass, and then behind the glass was just the roof. So it was just
Gotcha.
white. So I didn't know where the focus was, but I knew that I was going to pour the liquid onto the glass. So to nail the focus, before I do it, I just used the lens cap and then turned on focus peaking so that I knew that the letters were sharp on the Sony logo. And that way I could be sure that when I poured the liquid that it would be in focus, because last thing I want is to set all that up, make all that mess, and then it wasn't in focus.
Well, especially because you only have really, like in that situation, you really have like one shot to do it. I mean, you can do it as a bunch of times, but then you're cleaning the glass, doing it again, cleaning the glass, doing it again.
Yeah, exactly. So what was interesting about this was that I had to experiment a couple times with how to actually pour the liquid to get it to look good on camera, because I kind of just like tipped the glass over and kind of gently poured it down the piece of glass, and it created this effect, which I mean, it's not bad, but it's not what I was like envisioning, because I wanted it to look like it was like pouring.
Right.
And the whole idea was that I was going to be like telling the story of like, I think with every video, if you can always incorporate a story into it, it makes the video more engaging and more kind of captivating. And, as opposed to just like random shots of, beer flying all over the place. This was like, I wanted to tell the story of, opening the can of beer, pouring the glass, and then you kind of see the glass filling up, which I have more shots of later. And you can see it filling up. And that's kind of what I was going for, right? To tell this story of pouring a nice, refreshing glass of beer. So that's why this shot, I was like, yeah, I don't know if this works, because this doesn't really feel like beer pouring. It just was like, I don't know. So I'm not going to choose any selects from here, from this clip.
That's a really key point too, just to hit on again, like the idea of story, even when filming something as, so to speak, simple as this like beer pouring, there should be story tied to it in some way. It doesn't have to be the most monumental story ever, but just the thought that you had that went into it dictates what you choose to shoot, how you choose to edit it, what the finished product should look like. And that really guides you through the process. The editing itself, once you know what you need, can go fairly quickly. It's all the planning that goes into it ahead of time.
Exactly. Yeah. And the story just makes the video like have rhyme and reason to it almost, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like, and it doesn't have to be some like crazy complicated story. You could, like what I did was just like something simple, pouring a glass of beer, and to kind of get the audience to kind of make that connection in their heads when they're watching it, even though it's a spec commercial. But I mean, like, if this were to be a real commercial, they would be watching this and they would be like, oh yeah, it reminds me of pouring a refreshing glass of beer. So that then they now desire to, repeat that action, to take that action as well.
Drink more beer.
Drink more beer. Drink responsibly, though.
While we have a little lull here, I just want to, again, welcome everyone to the chat. Make sure that if you are tuning in, that you're, sending your questions in. We are here. If you're just joining us now, coming in a little bit late, I am joined today by Noah Fainer. He is going over how to create a really compelling spec beer commercial, and we're going through the whole process: assembly, organization, the whole the whole 9 yards. And as you can see, I like the bubbles there. Those look sweet.
Yeah, I was liking the bubbles too.
Yeah. So digging the bubbles, come join us, and maybe bring a beer along with you, depending on what time of the day it is.
Yeah. So here, like I was talking about earlier, how the glass fell. This is what it looked like. So I was right there.
Okay.
So I was pouring it, and I guess the weight of the liquid pushing on the glass,
I see.
like made it slip, and then right there, boom, it fell. And then this was me panicking to clean up. I was like, oh my God, there's beer all over my camera. There's beer all over the place. So yeah, then I scrambled to quickly clean that up, but this was more like what I wanted though, because if we look at the other shot that I had here, this was like too many bubbles. I was like, what's going on here? I didn't really, like, you couldn't really tell what's going on. So I redid it again. And this was like, you take the shot, watch playback. Are you happy with it? Move on. If you're not, then, let's work it until we're happy with it. And it's a spec commercial. So it's like, I can do take 2, take 3, take 16 if I wanted. And it's not the end of the world. If you were doing a client project, maybe if you were renting a studio, you're paying people to be there and to help you out, then, you have to kind of make a judgment call there. Like, is it worth doing another take? Can we live with this versus, we need to move on to actually get it done, because done is better than, never done at all. Right.
Yeah. I say that a lot. Done is better than perfect in some cases. You can perfect it to a certain point, and the beauty is in the edit sometimes where it actually becomes perfect in your mind. So,
right.
Cool.
But I've never personally found, like, there's always something about every piece of work that I've done that I'm like, oh, I just like, it's not 100%. It's like maybe 99, but not 100. And there's just always that something that exists in every piece of work that I just,
hey, that's a good thing. I think that I feel the same way about that. And I think it just, if you're never satisfied, if you're satisfied enough to show it to the world, to send it to a client, to have it out there, then you've done so much already. And to have that 1% of like, I can always make it better. It can always be better. And I reflect back on my work all the time. And there's times when after a couple months have gone by or a year, I'll look back at something that initially I didn't like about a sequence or like about a part of the video. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, actually that was done pretty well. Or I look back at something that I thought I liked and I want to rework it. So it's, as creators, I think we're always doing that. We're always trying to evolve our craft. And if we didn't do that, then we wouldn't be evolving. So I think it's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And you can kind of see here that I changed up my technique. I started using a funnel to kind of help create more of like a directional flow to the thing, because before it was just like spreading across the entire sheet of glass and it wasn't like concentrated in one area. It was just dispersing everywhere. Because it's a clear liquid, you couldn't really tell like what you're looking at, right? So the funnel idea helped me kind of, get it together. And I'm kind of liking the way this bubble just kind of shoots out, and this big bubble, and it's like bouncing around. So that's what I'm going to mark this as a select. And also to mark selects and to pick selects when I'm actually in my source window over here, I'm just pressing I and O on the keyboard to do in and then out. And then that's kind of how I choose the in and out points for each clip. And then when I'm satisfied with my selection, what I'll do is I'll press the comma or period button on the keyboard, and then that'll just insert it automatically into the timeline. And that's like a quick way of doing it using those keyboard shortcuts. You'll fly through the edit.
Oh yeah. Keyboard shortcuts all day.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love the way those bubbles look after that funnel too, because even if we had no context as to what you were working on, you would look at that and know, okay, that's some alcoholic beer being poured, and I dig it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it just made more sense. And this one, the part about this shot that's like I'm kind of iffy about is I don't know if I like the focus better on the actual stream coming down that's hitting the glass, or if I like the focus on the liquid that's dispersing across the sheet of glass. So I'll probably in this scenario, I'll probably just use or take some selects with both so that I have options later on. So I know that what's it called? Now they're all kind of like that. Well, either way, I'll just take a couple options so that I have if I like the way it flows in one scene, then I'll just keep that. But yeah.
Now a question for you in terms of audio, which I know that will be part of either today or tomorrow, but when you are shooting this, are you recording audio through a shotgun mic or through a recorder, or are you just planning on incorporating all the sounds in sound effects afterwards?
Yeah, so I'm not recording any audio while I'm shooting this. I'll do the sound effects after.
Gotcha.
And yeah, usually the term for that is Foley. So actually doing like Foley sound design and those kind of things afterwards. So I actually have just like a Zoom field recorder, and I'll just like go out and pour, maybe I won't use beer because it's more expensive. I'll use like a bubbly or something, fizzy water or something like that, to record the sound. But yeah, that's basically how I do it. I'll do it separately. It also depends like what you're shooting. Some circumstances you might need to be recording the sound as it happens, depending on what it is. So in that case, I would use a shotgun mic or something like that, or I would have a boom or something recording audio. Like especially if you have dialogue between two characters, if you're doing something with like people talking, you can't really like, add that in later. Like you can, but it makes everyone's life easier if you just record it when it happens, right?
Well, for you too, being in your apartment gives you a little more flexibility. Like you can trip on stuff and have music on in the background and be doing your own thing and not have to worry like I need everything to be quiet. My air conditioning needs to be turned off, or heat because you're in Canada. And it's just a little easier sometimes. So I find that I always record it. If in a situation like this, I think you already had a plan. So Foley is best.
Yeah, Foley's always great. It's always fun doing that too. I always have a lot of fun recording Foley.
We had I went to film school in college, and we had my junior and senior year, our thesis films. We did a lot of Foley work, a lot of ADR work, which is based, recording over tracks that were too loud, or re-recording dialogue. And it was so fun because we had a whole Foley room. There was little sandboxes set up, and like it was like you're like a kid playing in a sandbox again, just making noise. And I remember that being really fun, and I've carried that into some of my work as well. So it's an interesting art.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's always cool. I love watching the guys on TikTok do like Foley, where they play the video they're playing, especially with animation too, because I think with animation, it's like it's hard to kind of imagine what something that doesn't exist would sound like. But then when you have people like conceptualize it and actually, create the Foley, it's like, you're like, oh, wow, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just like, it's really cool.
That looks nice.
Yeah. So
Rob had a question in the chat, and this might be a little general, Rob, but we'll see. What are the most critical pieces of equipment in your studio? If you let's say you had to pick 2 pieces of gear, because we can't have them all. 2 pieces of gear in your studio that you couldn't live without.
So I'm gonna assume we're talking outside the camera and lens, because that's pretty.
Yeah, let's say the camera and lens are already taken care of.
Yeah.
Everything else, 2 pieces of equipment.
I'm gonna say a nice video light.
Okay.
Video light for sure.
Yep.
And a C stand.
I love that. That's an underrated grip tool. And for those in the chat, maybe you can let everyone know what a C stand is.
Yeah. So like a C stand is basically the best light stand ever. It can, I forget.
Take your fingers off.
Yeah. If you don't, there's so much etiquette around using a C stand that when I was actually working on like bigger sets, I learned so much about how to use a C stand. I was like, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is, makes sense. Pretty self-explanatory, but no, there's actually so much etiquette that goes around it. And it's basically a light stand, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a light stand. It could be a light stand, You can hold lights with it. You can also add like different mounts to it to kind of like hold flags, or diffusion or bounce, whatever. It's just an overall great tool for rigging things in
Yeah.
a studio environment, right? Or just
Yeah,
any film environment, really.
it is. And yeah, they're super, super useful. I used to, um, when I worked professionally as a for another company as a video producer, I would constantly, I had like 4 or 5 C stands on one little shoot that rigged up different things. I think one of them was like a boom, like a whole boom arm was rigged on a C stand and little like mounts, and then you can tip that into scenes. So it's definitely a really good piece of grip equipment. May not be the most appealing gear that you have to buy, but as you said, it really comes in handy.
Yeah, for sure. It's like C-stand all the way. And like you can get some like decently priced C-stands on Amazon, but generally C-stands are a little bit on the pricier side when it comes to light
Yeah,
stands.
yeah,
But
they're a bit.
it's well worth it because of just like you could do so many different things with them. And there's like hundreds of different applications you can use it for. And I was working on set this one time, and the director got the grips, and yeah, they got the grips to set up a bicycle being held by a C stand. It was like the most
Oh
epic
my
thing I've ever
God.
seen. Yeah, because they wanted, the director wanted to put like a bicycle in the background. We were shooting in like a garage, so he wanted a bicycle to just kind of fill the frame on one side. So there was no way of, putting a bike up there at the time. Like there was nothing to mount it to, right?
Oh my God.
So the grips just got like C stands and Apple boxes and like rigged this bike so that it was standing up vertically. And it was just in the shot, just a little part of the frame, but it was
That's
really
so
cool.
cool. That's super cool. Yeah, and that's the stuff that no one really sees. It's yeah, being on set is an incredible place to learn. It's where I got a lot of my education, honestly, just working with other people on set, and you really have to be crafty no matter how much gear you have. You got to just, everyone has to be innovative to think, even in what you're doing now, being innovative with the gear that you have and what you have at your disposal to produce what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think what makes, great filmmakers is not necessarily being able to use all the latest and greatest, but being able to make great work with, limited gear. That's when I think the skill really starts to come out. When you have people that can, create great things from just like no equipment.
Yep, absolutely. I get a lot of questions all the time of, oh, what camera are you shooting with? What lens should I buy? All these things, and my response is typically like, start small, and I wouldn't even think of the camera and the lens as the first purchase you'd make, especially given that we live in a world where an iPhone or a Samsung, our smartphones can produce really high quality video, and like you just
Right.
said, I think can push us out of our comfort zone and creatively think more than we would if we had. You give someone a red camera, they don't know how to use it, and they have no lights to shoot a product commercial. It's still going to look like, it's not going to look great. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to know the basics and to really work through that first before the gear.
And the lighting is everything too, because like you said, you can be shooting with like your smartphone, but it doesn't really matter what camera you have. You can literally just put a camera on a tripod, point it at your subject, and then, the difference between a pro and an amateur would be that the pro is gonna light the subject like crazy and do all these like crazy lighting techniques and stuff like that, whereas the amateur will just like, won't focus as much on the light and focuses more on like, oh, what I got to do with the camera. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Whereas like the lighting is where you start. And even when I'm on set, most of the time is spent lighting. Like
Yep.
the shot takes like 2 seconds, and then we just spent like 3 hours lighting this scene.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, we got the shot, next.
It's true. It really is. And that's where it comes to life. And it teaches you a lot in just learning from other people and seeing the way they light things. And it's a really, really an integral piece. It is filmmaking, and it's photography, is lighting. So that should be the first thing.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Like filmmaking is, and video production, videography is an extension of photography.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
Let's go into this shot here a little bit. Because I see you cut it in half. You have like some sort of filter under it to not show the bottom. So how did you create this shot?
Yeah, so this was interesting. This took a bit of engineering actually to come up with this, but basically what the idea here was that, we have the beer spraying through the can. It was just going to be something interesting to kind of, be attention grabbing and kind of start off the video. But what I did was, let me see if I can find some behind the scenes here of it. But I have some behind the scenes, and I basically just cut the can in half, and I cut the can in half and put like a screen under it because I didn't want the liquid. I had this like little spray tube thing, this thing that you can use to like fill with like your shower gels, and it's for traveling, like on airplanes. It's like 100 milliliters or something.
Okay.
And you can use it to fill with like shampoo and stuff, and then you can travel with it. But I bought it at the dollar store, and again, that's dollar store, always comes in handy. It was like a couple dollars. I don't even remember how much, but just a couple dollars. And I filled it with beer, squeezed it, and shot the beer up into the bottom of this can. So this made the biggest mess of all. So if we're talking about making a mess, this definitely was like, there was just beer everywhere. It was awful, but awesome at the same time. But yeah. And then I tried it again with the can, the tab on it. I wanted to get a shot with the tab. I also didn't like, I had two options here because this one I didn't really like. It looked like there was a bit of a dent here, or like a bit of something going on here, which might have just happened on accident. So I rebuilt the whole thing, but I just wasn't happy with how it was like turning out. I did this so many times, like you actually have no idea how many times I did this and how big of a mess I made.
So are you like so this thing is underneath the can because it's split in half, and then you have this tube and you're just like smacking it so that the liquid from inside this tube is shooting up through the bottom of the can.
Yeah, you know what? Here, I'll make a new bin, call it BTS. This way, because these files that I have, these video files, for some reason won't play back on my PC. So we'll import them into Premiere, and then I'll show you exactly how I did it, because I was like, I'm not gonna make this much of a mess and not document it. Like, of course I'm gonna document it. Yeah, so here's videos of me going to the dollar store, buying these things. See those the supplies. So like these squishy bottles, you fill it with like shampoo or what's it called? Yeah, body lotion. Yeah. I don't know, whatever. Just for like traveling, right? So then I found those. I was like, okay, I'll use that for beer. Then I'll spray the beer in it. Let me find a shot. Yeah, here, this one's the best. This was me.
The face though is so good.
Yeah.
Sitting on this like,
and it's at I recorded this at 240 frames per second too, so I have slow-mo of just
So you have a like a tripod, or you have like a light stand, or?
Yeah, here it is.
Wow.
So basically this like pony clip type thing that mounts to the top of the light stand. And then, what was it? Yeah, here it is. So this is like the can with a little spring. So this spring was like from a pen, the inside of like those clicky pens. I just took a pen apart, like mangled the spring, and then just glued it to the underneath of the can, because when I was doing it, when I was shooting the liquid through the top of the can, it looked like it was coming out in like a jet. Like, it didn't look like organic.
Organic.
Yeah, it looked like it was being sprayed by something. So I wanted this there to kind of disperse the liquid as it shot through. And then even with this kind of a strainer thing glued to the can, to the underneath of the can, to also help further, diffuse the beer, if you will.
It's so cool. I find it fascinating to see that process, and like, it just such engineering gone into this like very, very homegrown device to make this one shot.
Exactly. Yeah. So that. And then, yeah, this is just me gluing it. I had to cut the can open. And there were versions of this thing too. Like I was like prototyping it, because you can see in one of these shots here that, where is it here? Yeah. So I had it mounted to the light stand with this strainer, and then the can was cut in half and we had this thing. So when I shot it through, the force of the liquid hitting this contraption was so much that it would like knock the can out of frame. You know what I mean? Like the can was moving way too much. So then I had to figure out a way to, hold it still. And that's when I found this device here and this like pony clip that I had, usually for holding reflectors on like a C-stand or something.
Right.
But then I was like, okay, I'll use it for this. And
perfect.
Yeah, this solved the problem because it's really sturdy and all that. And then I also did like a little bit of a lighting breakdown here. So if you can see.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, so I had the camera there, one LED panel, and then kind of just like this light wand that to like give the background some light as well. And then yeah, there's this is my video light on a C-stand, and this was the same light that I used for that other shot for, where is it? This shot here.
Gotcha.
It's the same lighting setup, similar lighting setup to get this highlight here.
Cool.
Which I really liked to get to give it a bit of like a glow, so
it's almost like an abstract like glow too, because it's hitting the water, the beer.
Yeah,
there is some water there. It's really, really cool. And again, like I love seeing these behind the scenes of other people, the way that they have things set up, like it wouldn't be the way that I would think to do it. And I think that's the beauty of these Adobe Lives and the beauty of having someone like you come on here and walk us through your process, because it just makes you think a little bit differently. And it makes you think, how can I create this with the resources that I already have? Or if I have to go out and get them, I'm not spending, an arm and a leg to buy all these things. You can build a whole scene right here in your living room and then make the biggest mess ever.
Yeah, and if you saw the space that I was recording all of this in, like it's incredibly small. Like this is like, this is what, like less than 600 square feet or something around that.
Yeah,
like the whole place. So like, I had to completely rearrange the whole living room and kitchen just to make this happen. But you just got to be creative with it. You can't look at it in terms of limitations. You have to look at it in terms of like, okay, this is what I got to work with. How are we going to do this? And you can't just be like, there's not enough space. I can't do it. I'll wait for another time. Like you just gotta, that's part of filmmaking, I think. And, just in the world of video production, you got to figure out ways to sort of make it happen. So,
yeah, absolutely. Ruben, welcome to the chat, man. It's nice to see you in here. And yeah, any other questions from those in the chat? As you can tell, I'm pretty fascinated by this process. Ruben, you're killing it, man. We're doing pretty good on time. We're coming up on about 30 minutes to go. So I'm just kind of keeping you in check here, depending on what you want to get to and finish today and what you want to get into tomorrow. So just keeping you updated here.
Sounds great. Yeah, so here's this one. I don't know which one I like better, to be honest. It's kind of hard to decide.
It almost looks like the end there almost looks like a geyser, like a beer geyser, just exploding, bubbling from the depths of your apartment.
Yeah, exactly. All right, where'd that go? Here it is. Yeah, because I redid this shot like a million times, and you can even see here, like my hand, my whole arm is soaked.
Oh my god!
And my pants too. Like it got to the point where I was like, if I smell any more beer, I'm gonna puke. Like,
so when you were buying the type of beer for this commercial, this spec, did you have an idea in mind that you wanted to get a lighter beer for the color, or did you want like a darker lager because it's maybe more ambery? Like, was there a thought that went into that as well?
To be honest, there was actually no thought that went into the actual color of the beer itself. I'm not much, like I like beer. I'm a beer guy. Like if I drink, I'm gonna drink beer and I enjoy beer. but I'm not like a connoisseur or anything like that. You know what I mean? So I was just
Right,
like,
right.
I was in the beer store. The can caught my attention. It was really about the can though. I was like,
Got
whoa,
it.
I like that. The can
Cool.
was like, I was like, I just never seen anything like it. It stood out to me because like it has like this like film on it that makes it like iridescent, and it's like
Yeah.
refracting the light in different ways, and it just looked cool. So I was like, you know what, let me do this.
Sweet. Yeah, and it's kind of like it's got a bit of a timeless look, given that it's that minimal design that you were going for. So the only reason I asked, just out of curiosity, if like the can was the hero or if the color of the beer was the hero, and I think you've answered my question. So
Yeah, but I mean, I do like the color. I think it ended up working well.
yeah,
So I was happy with that. See, I think this one I was planning on actually compositing this in After Effects and cutting out the background. Yeah, I wanted to do something
this is
with
like
this.
this is ideally the hero shot, right? Like your last shot.
Yeah, so I'll actually show you guys. This is something I'm going to kind of have to be creative with a little bit, because I did render out a specific hero shot. So I'll actually, we're kind of getting towards the end of the footage, the choosing all the selects and stuff like that. So I'll import these as well. This is the hero shot and kind of like the opening sequence as well. So where is it? Here, yeah. How many of these did it import? Oh yeah, okay. So we have that one, and then we have the hero shot right here. So this is the thing. I wanted to kind of make it more abstract and kind of do a bit of like something interesting with it. So here, let's see. Oh no, I didn't import that properly. Hang on. Try to import this again, because there is one thing that I need to. So I actually rendered this with 3D software. And one thing you have to do if you're importing assets from 3D software is that it'll usually give you depending on how you render it, but it'll give you individual frames, and then you got to reconform those frames to an actual video. So what I do is you just click on the first one and click image sequence, this little checkbox down here, press open, and then now it'll actually bring it in as if it was a video. So so this is the hero shot.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to just go for something a little bit more abstract. And I was like, you know what? I can do this with 3D software, so I'm going to do it. And this is actually the hero shot. So, and then we also have one more shot. Where is it? Beer can, image sequence. Check that.
So you're doing essentially the same thing, because you created these renders in the 3D software. You're doing the same thing with that image sequence that you would like with old school time lapses and stuff, where you take that first sequence and then Premiere automatically sees all the other pieces of that render and create that video file for you.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Cool.
it's the way that they're labeled, right? So I guess I can delete this, but the way that they're labeled, so here, I'll choose a better example here. So it's hero shot 0001, and this is labeling each frame. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 120. So you could really just take any sequence of image files and give them a like incremental file name, like with the number, and Premiere will make it like an image sequence. So yeah, it's exactly the same process as doing a time lapse, but cool. Yeah. So here we go. This one is going to be like our opening shot. This is what I envisioned being the opening shot.
Sweet.
Just like these cans being thrown towards the camera. And then see, this is the beauty about doing things, in the digital world as opposed to, doing things in real life, is that I could make these cans fly towards the camera, and I could even get this highlight to like shoot across the can just like that, like perfect timing. Whereas like this would have taken forever to do it in real life, Yeah,
you're not gonna, I feel like if you do that in real life, you might be able to get it, but you're not gonna get that highlight like that. You're gonna have to, someone's gonna have to actually physically move a light.
Yeah. And
time it as such when it lands right in that focus point. So it's much easier to do it. And what render? So that's an After Effects, or is that
No, so I actually use Cinema 4D and Octane render engine to make this.
Cool.
But one thing that I did use was Photoshop and Illustrator to make this label, because this label as an asset like was not available anywhere online. So I actually had to recreate this label from
Oh
scratch.
man.
So I made it in Photoshop, yeah, and well,
Wow.
Illustrator to redesign this like middle piece here,
Hmm.
and then yeah, just remade it in Illustrator. The only one that I didn't make in Illustrator was the Spearhead Brewing Company, like letters here, was because I didn't know what font this was, and it was like very stylized that I don't think you could just like find a font that was similar. So I just took an image that I found on Google, and that's where I used Photoshop to incorporate that into the design. But yeah, so
Sweet. Wow. Very, very cool.
yeah, and then that was basically just projected onto this 3D can model that I found online for free. And I had to create, the hard part was actually creating this like iridescent material, recreating that in 3D so that it reacted to light the same way that the one in real life does. So there's a lot of time spent kind of tweaking it to get it just right. And I did render this out with a transparency. I rendered it out with alpha channel so that I can go into we'll do this in After Effects as well tomorrow, but this is like a color matte, and then I can throw this behind, and now I can change the background.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So you knew when you were making this and shooting everything that you were going to have your hero, you know, your intro hero, and then the final shot be rendered in a 3D software. So you kind of had that in mind before you went into it.
Yeah, exactly. I did. I knew that I was going to do that.
That's pretty cool.
Part of the reason was that like I wanted to see if I could recreate this material in 3D and make it like look legit. So
I mean, I think you nailed it. It's pretty sweet, especially there. I feel like it really gets sold there on the can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just looks really, really cool. And like stacked next to each other. And I'm sure you're going to get into tomorrow when we're working in After Effects, is just being able to like blend the two together so that it does feel, you know, like this cohesive mix.
Yeah. The only thing that I couldn't figure out how to do was there's like a bit, if you can like see here, how do I zoom this in? If I look at the can itself, it almost has like a grain to it. Like it's like there's like a bit of grain behind the film, and that I couldn't figure out how to get like this. Maybe if I added like a noise, I don't know. I could probably spend some more time like fine tuning that, but either way, I mean, this looks pretty usable. So
yeah. Oh my God, absolutely.
So yeah, and the idea is that also this is going to be the first shot, and then this is going to be the last shot. Cool. The reason this is the first was because I wanted to start off the commercial with something more, you know, like high energy, fast paced editing, that sort of thing. Because I was just doing some background research on this company, just like looking at their website, Instagram page, that sort of thing, and it seemed to me, I could be wrong, but it seemed to me that they were trying to appeal to a more like younger generation, you know, people who were like, you know, more, you know, out there, like adventurous, millennials, you know, that kind of age range. So I was like, higher energy, higher paced clips, you know, not something like slow and classy and like elegant. Maybe that would be more for like an older generation, but this was like high energy, you know, creative. That's what it seemed to be all about, right? So I wanted to start off the commercial with like something like this, just to be like, you know, attention grabbing and make people be like, oh, how the heck did he get that shot, you know? And then we're going to go straight into, you know, like the opening of the beer. So that's what we can do next, actually.
So that's a good point too, Noah, like in terms of doing your research on the, you know, when you're creating a spec, you're at the stage of creating the spec, you're not hired by this company to do it, but the goal would be to use it as portfolio work and potentially get hired by other beer companies or this beer company in the future. So I think that's a really good point and tip of making sure you're researching like who this company is and what they stand for, what they're all about, what their branding looks like, so that if they were to see it, it would also feel on brand to them too, right?
Yeah. Like I wanted it to feel like like if they see this, I want them to be like, oh yeah, I could totally see that being like as a part of our, it fits. It's just like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
works, as opposed to, if which like you can do it as well. I mean, if you kind of have like a vision and you want to take it your own direction and just use the product because you just want to use the product, and I mean like that works too. But in this case, the goal was to create something that was usable by
Right.
the company itself, and also just as like practice for me, just like practice with video marketing, practice doing that sort of thing. So
Sweet.
yeah, so now that I've pretty much chosen all of these selects, I can get started with actually piecing together kind of like the main story. So what I would do at this point was switch over to my editing workspace. So over here, I click editing. And this way I can like throw on effects. We've got the effects panel right here, effects controls over here. And I can still access the content browser right here. So I'm just going to open sequences, my sequence folder that I made earlier, go into main. And then what I do here is I click on the sequence and I'll drag it, and you'll see these things pop up and start highlighting themselves. And this lets you just pretty much put the sequence in its own window. So I'll take my main sequence, drag it underneath the selects. And now I have my selects timeline up here, and I have my main timeline over here. So another tip that I would like to share is actually see this like yellow bar here. This pretty much just means that your footage is, it's not like the preview isn't fully rendered out yet. And if you make like heavy changes, like once we start doing the color grading and stuff like that, you start making those big changes to the footage, it'll actually turn red to show you that it's not rendered out any, like you don't even have a preview of it. And for lower quality machine or lower spec machines, you can actually, it might be slow for you to play back. And I know that when I'm editing like this, I shot in 1080 because my camera only does 120 FPS at 1080. So for my computer, it's fine. But if I'm trying to edit 4K 120 or even 1080 240 frames per second on like this machine, then it'll just be so slow that I can't even scrub through the clips, and I just can't work like that. So what I would do in that, if I was in that scenario, would be to just set in and out points on the actual timeline that I want to render a preview for. And then I would go up to sequence and then render into out. This way it'll start rendering out previews for the video clips. And one thing to keep in mind is that when you do this, it does take up space on your actual hard drive. So if we have this folder here, Adobe Premiere Pro Video Previews, and this is where it's going to actually contain all the data that I'm generating right now. So if you are backing up your project to like a hard drive, external drive, or something like that, you wouldn't want to include this folder because it's just going to take up space for no reason. So I would, So in terms of like saving your project, backing things up, I would not want to include this, but everything else I would. So
and would you in another, this is maybe a little more complex for today, and maybe we can get into it tomorrow, but if you were, let's say you were shooting on a camera that was 4K 120, or some of these newer ones that are 4K like 240, would you use proxy files in that situation, or does your computer and your machine handle those files anyway?
Yeah, so I actually would use proxies, and that's actually a great question. I did want to touch on that at some point, but yeah, so I would use proxies, and I did actually have a shoot on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We were shooting for 3 days, and we were shooting at 4K 120 for most of it, and the file sizes were just absolutely monstrous, like huge file sizes, and we were shooting with the A7S III. Right. So like there was a lot of data. Like I bought a hard drive specifically just for that shoot because I knew that I was like, this is going to destroy my computer. So we ended up having like 300 gigs of footage, which is
just in like 2 or 3 days. It's crazy.
Yeah, which is not that bad. Like if you shot with like REs or like reds or like some of those cameras or even Blackmagic's, like those file sizes can get absolutely like a mind-bogglingly large. I remember
Yeah.
I was shooting an interview with a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and we were just letting the camera roll for 10 minutes, and like the file size, the B-raw, we were shooting in B-raw, by the way, so it was like
Okay.
raw. So the file size was like a terabyte, and I was like, this
Oh
is
my God.
not like, it was huge. It was just, I was like, no way.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah. No, I've been running into that issue. Last year I got a C70 for all of my like documentary and my filmmaking work. And I love the camera, but the computer that I have right now has a really tough time just rendering any of the files. So I've been using proxies since then, which have really, really helped. But, it's another step in the process. And, for those in the chat that are interested, proxies essentially are, Premiere exporting a smaller version file, lower res file that they mirror and see as the file that you're going to actually render. And then when you actually export it out of Premiere, you turn your proxy button off and you essentially export the entire thing out. So it is very helpful, because I was ready to jump out my window and just throw all of my camera gear out the window. I was just like, no, this is making me very mad.
Yeah, and it sucks too when you have to when you buy a nice camera and then it records all this like beautiful footage, but because it's recording such like high quality, like high bit depth, and it's recording a lot of data. So you don't always think about the storage aspect as like, oh, can my computer even edit this type of footage?
Right.
Do I have enough storage space to actually, store the footage that I just captured? And like, you don't always think about that, but like you need to consider all those variables, if you're deciding on buying a new camera. Because,
absolutely. Yeah.
What's the point of buying some crazy expensive camera and then you can't even use it to its fullest potential because you don't have enough storage for it?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. No one thinks about that, and everyone just wants the new shiny toy, the 8K, the 12K, the whatever. No one's shooting on that because no one's machines can handle file sizes that big, So it's like if you bought a bus, but you had a tiny little garage for it, you gotta make sure you have the foundation to read it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I can actually, for those watching who want to know how to do proxies, it's actually as easy as just right clicking the folder with all your footage, going up to proxy, and then create proxies. When you click that, it'll launch Adobe Media Encoder automatically, and then it'll render out each clip within that folder at a lower resolution so that you can play it back in Premiere and it'll be nice and smooth. And one thing that you can do is this little button right here, toggle proxies. You can turn the proxies on and off once you've rendered them out. So you can just flip that switch. And I'm pretty sure Premiere will automatically render out the full res version when you actually go to export your footage, even if you have proxies, I think.
Yep. They'll Premiere's pretty smart. They know what's going on. So it's a huge hack if you are shooting with, high quality footage. And I find myself a lot of the time, even for YouTube, like I just end up filming 1080p on most situations just because I don't want to deal with proxy files, or I don't want to deal with bigger size files. When it's client work, then I tend to shoot on the cinema camera and shoot everything in 4K. But, for ease of use and going through a project quicker, more efficiently, I end up just sticking with 1080p, and it still looks great. It still looks really, really good.
Yeah. Again, it's all in the lighting, right? If you have good lighting, and good everything else, then
absolutely
should be fine.
Absolutely. So you got about 10 minutes, Noah.
Okay.
So keep on doing your thing. Again, any questions? Ruben, I'm very glad that we taught you something new today. Your Premiere Pro skills being sharpened, being honed.
That's great.
That's what we're here for. We're here to learn and to share our knowledge. I mean, this Pancake editing style that you're using right now is not really an editing method that I tend to use. So I'm learning something new from you today as well. It's a really cool way to see it laid out.
Oh, I love to hear that. Actually, I do a lot of tutorials on Premiere and filmmaking in general on my TikTok and Instagram pages as well. So
sweet.
A lot of that I do like pretty much daily content on filmmaking there. Yeah.
I will have to check that out. I can get into TikTok Instagram, YouTube holes. I can get into all the holes, and then I do nothing with my life. So I need to I need to be efficient with it. But that's very cool. And make sure everyone in the chat to check out Noah's tutorials, because just based on today, you are good at teaching it, and it's an interesting thing to see everyone else's process.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, it's my passion. I love teaching. I love teaching as much as I can. So
me too. So that just go back real quick to that first hero clip. So is there so you kind of like speed ramped that little like arc in Cinema 4D, right? You didn't add any of that in Premiere yet?
Yeah, like this, like what, the camera?
Yeah, that's just a keyframed camera essentially, or like a...
Yeah, so like pretty much how it works is like you just, if it's like animating the position of something, like,
right.
Let me just think of an example. Like if I just take this and then I'll like draw a mask, and then now I have a ball, and let's say I wanted to like animate it. So I go from down here to here. And nope. Yeah, see, so then you get something like this, which is called a motion curve. Yeah. And then basically, just like in Premiere, it's actually similar in Cinema 4D, except in 3D, obviously. But you have these like what's called Bezier handles, and these things can control the motion curve and actually add a bit of damping to the start and end points of your animation. So like it just adds like a bit of it's like kind of going like here and doing changing that to Bezier, or like ease in and ease out. It's the same concept, but except in 3D.
In 3D space.
Yeah. So
gotcha.
So how I did it was, it's like an arc. So if you can imagine, I can probably even recreate it here. So like what's nice about Premiere is that it lets you like click and interact with the motion curve. But basically this is what the arc looked like. So you have two keyframes, and then the interpolation between them is this, right, up and down motion, right? If that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's essentially what was going on there.
Awesome.
So yeah, now my goal is to really just tell the story of the beer being poured, right? So what I'll do is I'm going to use my selects, my top timeline, and then my main timeline to build out the story. So the main timeline is kind of like, if you think about it, like, again, going back to the painter's analogy, this is like the main is like the canvas, the final place where everything takes, everything happens on the canvas, right? And then the selects is kind of like your palette. Like if you imagine the painter holding like a little palette with all the different colors on it, and then he picks which color he wants, and then he puts it onto the canvas. So it's the same concept, but with videos, with clips of videos, right? So in my head, I'm going like, okay, this is everything that I have to work with. And this is why choosing selects is so important, because if I just like, didn't, put my time and effort into choosing selects, all these clips up here wouldn't be the best clips. They would be kind of, not very nice looking. So then when I go to make my final edit, that it's going to reflect in the final edit. So definitely choosing selects could be tedious, could be a little boring sometimes, but I don't know about you, James, but sometimes when I going to choose selects is like kind of like the first thing you do after a shoot. And it's always the most like nerve-wracking part, because it's like you look at the footage for the first time and you're like, oh, please be good.
I know. It's so true. I feel like it's when there's some shoots you leave where you're like, okay, I nailed it. I know I got everything I needed. And then the selects just reinforce that notion that, okay, I did everything I could. But then there's a lot of shoots I'll get off where I'm like, oh, did I really get it? And then I come into the selects and I realize I don't really have as many clips as I thought I had, or maybe the clips I thought were really good, or one of them's out of focus. So even going back to those behind the scenes that you had, like with an external monitor, making sure that you're nailing focus so that you're not surprised when you come into these selects and go, oh no, everything is just a little soft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the moment of truth when you go through the footage. You're like, oh,
yep,
please.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
I totally agree.
Okay, so now I'm kind of just thinking about like, okay, what's the story? So you open the can of beer. This is to symbolize, this shooting stuff is symbolizing the opening of the can. Also, one thing I was keeping in mind when I was planning out this project was that I wanted these like high energy, interesting shots that make people like be like, oh, how the heck did he do that? To be at the beginning, because if you're thinking about creating a video from like a video marketing standpoint, you want the first 3 seconds of the video to be it's called the hook. You want that portion of the video to be what grabs people's attention and makes them want to watch more. And they say that you have 3 seconds to capture someone's attention before they keep scrolling, right? And with the vast amount of content out there, there's so much content out there that it's so easy to just be like, okay, I'm going to go watch something else. But when you think about like, okay, I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, what can I do to kind of make this, pop and make this feel like, make someone want to keep watching. So for me, that was like this cool 3D rendered shot. And then also this shot that took so long to get.
That's a pretty shot. I like that one a lot.
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it too. I just love the highlight here.
Yeah, me too.
It just creates like a nice shine to it that just like looks, and this was very intentional. This was like, I had to tweak the lighting for that.
I just imagine like Sam Elliott with his deep voice, like, oh, bored in the Rockies. He's just on the top of a mountain somewhere. Just with that shot. I mean, you've seen it so many times in beer commercials and they still get me. They are always still so interesting to watch.
For sure. And then let's see. So we cut, then we're going to cut to this, pouring it. And the idea is that this was going to kind of be like from the perspective of the glass, So we have that. That's good. And see, this is, or maybe this should come first. Yeah, you know what? Okay, I have an idea. So this is how it's going to go down. This is going to open, then this is going to come, but just before it hits the glass, we're going to cut, or just as it hits the glass.
Yeah, I like that.
Cut it. So it's like beer can opens, makes a huge mess everywhere.
Boom.
Then we're going into the pouring, and this also, like, it's just in focus there, which I like. I like how it's going from out of focus, falling into focus. Maybe we'll just give that clip a bit more. And then we go into this. And the thing is, you can always go back to your selects and then pick a part that you like. But then, yeah, anyways. So it goes into that.
I like that a lot. Match cuts.
Yeah, exactly. That's the term.
Oh, it's cool too. Like, I feel like making sure there's always something happening too, and you're cutting out any of the dead space. So you know, making sure you're not just like taking a second of the beer not getting in the glass, like you're taking that beer actually pouring into the glass, and it just keeps it moving again with that. For hook. Sure. No, I think we're running a little low on time today.
No worries.
So I want to make sure we completely get to your entire edit tomorrow, and I know you're planning on continuing this and then hopping into After Effects tomorrow as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So no, we're just in terms of my schedule, we're right on the dot.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Noah, for just blowing our minds today with some amazing behind the scenes and your product video here. I can't wait to see the finished product, and I appreciate you coming on the stream today. For those that have tuned in today, thank you for your questions, and make sure to come back tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific time for part 2 of editing a product commercial in Premiere and After Effects. So we're going to be dabbling a little bit in both. Stay tuned for the XD Creative Challenge encores right after this stream, where we'll continue the logo theme challenges, followed by a new episode of Power Prompts with Cody Bear. This week's prompt is Cozy Rain Window. I don't know what that means, but I can't wait to check it out. And Adobe Live will be back tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time with a Creative Cloud Express stream to get your morning started off right. So tune in with Claudie from Print My Soul on Adobe Live as she uses the app to create some digital flyers. So that is all from day 1 of Adobe Live. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Noah. Super excited to be back for day 2 tomorrow, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Thanks, James.